Welcome inside this week opening edition of Big Ten Today, presented by Gatorade. Rick Pizzo, thrilled to be joined by Rafael Davis. Paul Caponigri is with us in just a bit to talk some pucks. But we start on the hardwood. An up and down weekend, some surprises, some results that were expected. And at the end of Sunday night, both you and I sat up on our other set after Big Ten basketball and beyond and said, man, Fred Hoiberg is doing a heck of a job at Nebraska.
Yes, big shout out to Coach Hoiberg. I was at a shoot-around a couple years ago watching Nebraska before they played Northwestern, and it looked like those guys wanted to get Coach fired. They gave no effort. They had no energy. And to see what Coach has done in just 2 seasons, turn the program around, got these guys to commit on the defensive end. These guys are a tournament team, no question about it. A huge shout out to Coach. He's got the job done.
Comfortably in the field right now, and with 3 remaining games in which they will be favorites in each and every one. Time for the big story presented by Gatorade as well. And this is a look back at the weekend results. Top 2 from Saturday. Penn State knocks off Indiana. Mike Rhodes has also done a terrific job in year 1 with the Nittany Lions. Illinois by 10 over Iowa. That game was close until the Illini went on a late run. Coleman Hawkins had 30. A jam-packed Sunday saw 4 games. Maryland goes to the banks, knocks off Rutgers. Purdue gets 35 and 15 from Zach Edey to beat Michigan. Dale Bonner beats the buzzer, and Michigan State falls to Ohio State 60-57, while the aforementioned Huskers roll Minnesota 73-55. Let's start with the Big Ten's highest-ranked team and Purdue. Give Michigan a bunch of credit, Rafael, because the Wolverines hung around for a long time, made Purdue work for it, but they simply had no answer. And Juwan Howard said afterwards, even in my prime, I couldn't guard Zach Edey, who goes for 35 and 15. Yes. But the most impressive number was field goals. He was 14 of 18 from the field. That's around 78%.
He just didn't play with his food. He got the job done at a high level. They threw the ball to the big fella on the block, and it was barbecue chicken every single time he touched the ball. It didn't matter who was guarding, whether Terrace Reed, Will Shatter, where it was a double team, like Coach Howard said. They sent the entire kitchen sink at Zach Edey, and nothing worked. And it just shows you how good Purdue is, because even when they don't shoot it well from 3, like they didn't in the game yesterday, they still find ways to win. The big fella was great, but then they out-rebound you by 17. They don't turn the basketball over. 17 offensive rebounds, just big time on the road.
I think Zach Edey's size sometimes takes away, Rafael, from the basketball player he has become. A year ago, there was no talk of Edey being able to play in the NBA. Everybody said you might as well come back. The league is not for you at this time. I think that narrative has completely changed, because it's time for us to realize that Zach Edey's not just 7'4". He is a legit 5-man with great footwork who understands the fundamentals of the game, and he can just play now.
And he got great endurance. He can run the floor. He does not get tired. He's physical. He embraces the physicality of the game. He has great character, a great leader. He's a guy that you can throw the basketball to outside of his area. I played with a big guy, Isaac Haas, and if you didn't throw it right to his forehead, he struggled. If that rebound didn't come right to his area, he struggled to go get it. But you see Zach Edey rebounding outside of his area. He caught a pass yesterday from the top of the key that he had no business catching, stretched for it, flexible guy, and then defensively he's added a level. He's always been a rim protector because of his size. He discourages from driving, but now he's been able to take a step up on ball screens, corral screens better, move his feet a little bit better. You've seen guys try to stretch him out towards the three-point line and drive on him. He's been better all around this season, and to see him get better from last year, it just speaks to his work ethic. So when he does get that opportunity to play at the next level, you know he's going to put the work in and do whatever his coach is asking.
I still just don't understand when teams are kind of saying, okay, maybe we can't stop Zach, but we're going to do our absolute best to take away everybody else. And I understand that concept, but you give up 35 to the big guy down low, you're going to have no chance to win the game unless you shoot threes at a remarkable clip. And I think with Braden Smith and with Lance Jones, with some of these other pieces, and no one had a great shooting day on Sunday. So I think that's important to note. You can have a bad shooting day and still score 84 because it was the bad shooting day last year that did them in that first-round loss to FDU.
Exactly what you're saying, because if you throw the kitchen sink at Zach Edey and those other guys miss some shots and you hope that's your formula, you got to rebound the basketball. You can't get out-rebounded by 13. You cannot give up 17 offensive rebounds. You think about those other guys that did not shoot it well. Purdue rebounded 50% of their misses in the basketball game.
That's an insane number.
It's just outrageous. So when they do miss, you got to get that rebound and be able to push the break a little bit, because when Michigan was able to get rebounds, when they were able to get stops, they had no issue scoring the ball. But you can't go up against a team like a Purdue and give them second chances to score the ball. That is a difference this year between Purdue and last season, is that they can offensive rebound at a high rate, and then Braden Smith just controls the show. Even on the bad shooting night, 11 points, 11 assists, 8 rebounds. He finds ways to get other guys involved, and then they have a third scorer consistently in Lance Jones, because even on a bad shooting night per se, 6 of 12 from the field, he still gave them 15 points. And having 3 consistent guys offensively, a bucket in Zach Edey, a tone setter in Braden Smith, and then a guy on a wing that can go get you 15 to 17 points, that's the difference in Purdue this season for sure.
So 14-3 now through 17 games. The remaining 3 are tough. They have Michigan State this coming weekend. Then next week they have Illinois and Wisconsin. Of course, the Illini and the Badgers have to play each other this coming weekend. So the loser of that game, if Purdue knocks off Michigan State, basically eliminated from the Big Ten race, and we'd be down to 2 teams. Right now, many of us think it's down to 1 team. Raphael isn't quite ready to give it to his alma mater just yet.
Not yet.
And that's because Illinois picked up a really important win against an Iowa team that had gotten hot at just the right time. Iowa was suddenly sniffing the NCAA tournament bubble again. They held the Illini in check. At least they were able to match up offensively. This was a really fun game to watch, but they had no answer for Coleman Hawkins late. Hawkins goes for 30, and the Illini pull away in the final 5 minutes to win this game by 10 over the Hawks.
Yeah, just a huge shout-out to Coleman Hawkins, because you heard Coach Underwood after the game said he pulled Coleman Hawkins aside and said we had to have a long talk because long talks are needed sometimes.
This is after the Penn State loss on Wednesday night, you're saying?
Yeah, this is after that game, and he had a talk with Coleman Hawkins, brought him into the office, probably showed him some film, talked him through some things, because Coleman did not finish that Penn State game in a great fashion, made some mistakes that seniors don't make. So I love the way Coleman Hawkins responded, because a lot of guys don't have that mental toughness, that mental fortitude to sit with your coach, probably be said some words to you that you don't want to hear, probably be brought back to reality. And he responded on both ends of the floor, went for 30 points, 5 assists, 5 steals on the defensive end. That's how you respond as a senior in a tough moment for sure.
And I think Hawkins is the guy. I know Terrence Shannon is the better player. Yep. I know that Marcus Domask is a guy who has scored a little bit more than Hawkins. Yeah. But to me, when you look at what Hawkins can do at his size, we've discussed this a lot, his ability to guard the 1 through the 5, his ability to make every single lineup that's on the floor for Illinois, whether Justin Harmon's out there, whether Quincy Guerrier is out there, whether Ty Rodgers is out there, he makes it all interchangeable. And that's why this team, with all those parts, is going to be so nasty for somebody in the NCAA tournament that hasn't seen them through the course of the regular season to try to figure out how to scout and how to deal with, because you just don't see a team like this very often.
Oh, no, for sure. You think about their positional size, starting with Ty Rodgers at the point guard position at 6'7", 220 pounds, then Coleman Hawkins playing their 5, but he can play their 1 at 6'10". It's just beautifully defensively. That's how you want to be built. They're long, they're athletic, but a hooked-up Coleman Hawkins takes this team from a Sweet 16 team to potentially a Final Four team.
I agree.
He guards 1 through 5, like you said. He's a leader on the floor when he's emotionally in a good way. When he hones his emotion, shoves it out in a positive way to his teammates, they feed off of it. He can push the basketball in transition. He can make an open 3. He can have some post games and finish at the rim. You put a big stiff on him on the outside, he's going to drive right around him. You've seen what he did to Iowa and Ben Cricky on the perimeter right to start the game. And then you put a smaller guy on him, he's just going to go in the post. If it's not for him, he's a willing passer. So if he takes a double team, he can pass right out of it. A hooked up Coleman Hawkins is not just one of the better players in the Big Ten, but one of the better players in the country, one of the most unique players across the land. Because if you tell Illinois fans you're going to give up 85 points to Iowa at home, Marcus Domask and Terrence Shannon are going to go 6 of 19 from the field
combined
and only score 20 points, they think they lose that game. But Coleman Hawkins, he showed up when they needed him in a big way.
Yep. Hawkeyes had come off wins over Wisconsin, Michigan State. They were back in the tournament talk. Now, this loss doesn't eliminate them from that conversation. Right. They still have Illinois in the rematch in their remaining games, but they're probably going to have to go at least 2-1 during this stretch, and they're certainly going to have to win a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament to get back in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. Now, we did not think that Michigan State was in any danger of potentially missing the tournament as of maybe a week ago. They have a rough week at home this week, including that loss to Ohio State, in which Dale Bonner knocks down the three. Michigan State, I believe, scored 9 points in the final 11 minutes and 45 seconds. We've been beating this drum all year long, you and I together. I don't understand how a team that is this veteran, with guys like A.J. Hoggard and Jaden Akins and Malik Hall and Tyson Walker, guys who have been around the block, Penn, in all these situations, can let a double-digit lead like that slip away at home against a struggling team in transition when you know how important it is. To me right now, it is as mental with Michigan State as it is physical.
Yeah, they're just consistently inconsistent. And it's weird to me because those guys you mentioned, only Tyson Walker is a transfer in. These guys aren't just at Michigan State for the last few years. They were recruited by Tom Izzo. They watched the Michigan State teams play, the good Michigan State teams, so they understand what they have to do to win these type of games before they even get to campus. And Malik Hall had a fine game from the field. He had 15 and 7, but everyone else struggled. It can't be if Tyson Walker doesn't score the ball, we're going to lose a basketball game. It can't be if we don't shoot it well from the three-point line, we take our ball and we go home. When Michigan State, when they shoot it well from deep, when they're making their jumpers, they look like they're having fun. When that basketball is not going in, they look like they're just have no energy, not having fun, not putting in the Michigan State effort, and Ohio State took full advantage.
I know it was a little bit of a heave. The Dale Bonner game winner was a little bit of a miracle. Tyson Walker tried to get the hand up. The timing was just off. Bonner eventually knocks down the three. But to me, it's not just about that one shot.
No.
You're up 48-36 with 11 and a half to go. You let Ohio State close back in, and you allow that to happen, and then this occurs late. Bonner didn't have a good game. He was 2 of 8 from the field, but he knocked down the most important shot of all, a shot only made possible because Michigan State, for some reason, Raphael, kind of went away from what was working in the first half. We saw Xavier Booker in the first half get some extended minutes. That didn't happen in the second half. We saw Tom Izzo trying to experiment, and you can see a coach searching. Carson Cooper, Jackson Kohler on the floor at the same time.
Cone car.
Michigan State has not really been a team that has succeeded with one big on the floor this year. So you put 2 on, and clearly Tom's trying to figure something out. But that's trouble when you're still trying to figure something out, and we're talking about a game being played in late February.
Right, I'm never questioning what Coach Izzo is doing.
Of course not.
One of the better coaches in the country. But you think about when Xavier Booker's on the floor in that first half, they had a play where Ohio State scored the ball, and within 5 seconds, Michigan State got a basket. Xavier Booker brings speed to the floor. He brings the athleticism. He makes you guard him differently. He allows Malik Hall some space because he's a 5-man that can knock down the three from the perimeter. I love that lineup with Xavier Booker at the 5, but I also would love the lineup of Malik Hall at the 5. Sometimes I hear Coach Beilein say it in the green room, and he's saying, just play your 5 best players. And I think that's what Nebraska has done when you think about Josiah Alec and Jawan Gary starting together, and they were splitting time to start the season. I would trust Malik Hall at the 5 because you think about Michigan State, they were out-rebounded by Ohio State anyway. So if Malik Hall's at the 5, at least it helps you offensively. It allows you to get in transition. It spreads the floor. Cohen Carr is a great cutter, a slasher, a rebounder at that 4 position. He's not really a shooter at the 3 spot, so the floor shrinks with him. But when you have those big guys at the 4 and the 5 and a Cooper and a Kohler, and then you have a Cohen Carr at the 3 or say Jay Nakins, and Jay Nakins goes 1 of 9 from the field, the floor just shrinks. There's nowhere to drive the ball. Tyson Walker has nowhere to go. They just become into a jump shooting team, and that's why they go 4 for 26 from 3. But I do want to give a big shout out to Devin Royal, Ohio Mr. Basketball as a freshman, coming in this season, hasn't had the opportunities that I know he wanted coming in, but 14 points on the road at Michigan State, 2 clutch steals down the stretch. He was big, and Ohio State's bench showed up because you think about Roddy Gale and Bruce Thornton. They go 7 of 23 from the field, scored 23 points, and Jamison Battle does not play. And you got crazy bench production, 24-10. That's what got the job done.
Amazing that they were able to find a way to win. I don't have this stat in front of me, but I have to imagine it has not happened very often. Michigan State losing back-to-back games at home in the same week to opponents each under 500 in Big Ten play. Could not have happened very often in the Tom Izzo era, but it happened this week in East Lansing. Your big stat is also fueled by Gatorade. You look at Nebraska, which on Sunday won its 20th game of the season, only 7 times ever. Only 6 times in the last 30 years have the Huskers won 20 games. But you look on the right side, and only 1 of the last 6 occasions did they actually make the NCAA tournament as a team with 20 wins. We're just going to write yes in on that top right column with the 3 question marks because both Rafael and I believe the Huskers are clearly part of the 2024 NCAA tournament. They backed that up with a win over Minnesota in a game they knew they had to win against a struggling Gopher team at home. Rafael, on Sunday night, I described Nebraska as a team whose sum is much greater than its parts. And now that's not taking anything away from some really good players like Juwan Gary and Rink Mast. Bryce Williams can do a lot. Keisei Tominaga can get as hot as anybody. But those guys rarely have big games together. They share the spotlight. They're comfortable with that. And I think their chemistry is a huge reason why Fred Hoiberg's having his best year in Lincoln.
Yeah, because if you had to name 10 players right now for a first and second team, all Big Ten team, you couldn't name a Nebraska player.
Probably true.
It speaks to how they are as a team, how they all know their role, they maximize their efforts. There was one play in the game, and I love how you called it Nebraska ball. Because one play described it. Josiah Alec, he got a block. Rink Max saved it from going out of bounds. Bryce Williams pushes it down the court. He hits Juwan Gary for a 3-pointer, and all 5 guys on the court celebrated as if they just made that big-time 3, and that's what Nebraska is. They're a team that gives their all. They're teams that love to play hard. You think of Josiah Alec, a hometown kid, coming home, he doesn't care if he scores the basketball. He just wants to play hard. He just wants to win. Juwan Gary, one of the toughest dudes in the Big Ten. You hear him after the game, said, I'm just a dog. And yes, he is. 22 points, 8 rebounds, made 4 threes. If Juwan Gary's going to start making threes at this time of the season, Nebraska could be a Sweet 16 team. I love the way they play because we've been talking about combos a little bit. Rink Mask and Tominaga go 5 of 19. They get 16 points. Nebraska shoots 39% from the field, but they win by 18. That's just a total testament to their locked-inness and their defense right now.
I love Juwan Gary in that post-game interview. He called himself a dog, but in no way did it seem egotistical or cocky. He knows that's his role on this team, a team that took care of business with an 18-point win against Minnesota. Maryland all year has struggled on the road, but they go to a really tough place to play against a Rutgers team that showed just a few weeks ago during its 4-game win streak that it can be dangerous. Maryland completely locks down Rutgers on the defensive end, gives up 18 points, I believe, in the first half. Julian Reese does his thing down low. And to me, this is a really important game for Maryland because it lifts them above that status where they would have to play on Wednesday into getting the single bye and being able to play on Thursday with Jameer Young, with Julian Reese. If the defense plays like that, this is a team that if they get the right matchup starting on Thursday, I think could be a nasty out in Minneapolis.
Yeah, because now you look at Jordan Geronimo giving them some production at that 4 spot. He gave him 11 points, 11 rebounds, 6 of them offensively. When you play a team like Rutgers, the first step is embracing the physicality of the game and taking care of the basketball and taking the fight right to Rutgers. And that's what Maryland did. I thought Julian Reese was awesome. He took the fight right to Clifford Morey, didn't back down not one bit. Talked some trash, got into his game, got into his bag, 20 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks, and then defensively took Cliff out of this basketball game. Cliff only played 17 minutes, but 2 of 6 from the field, only 5 points. And Jameer Young struggled shooting the basketball, but got 9 assists. Just the floor general, set the tone on both ends. I wouldn't want to be a team that plays Maryland on that Thursday night, especially a team that's not the greatest athletes, that's not athletic. You get against this team that's tenacious on the defensive end, that can out-rebound anybody in the conference. You get their core 3 guys going. If you get a little bit of help from somebody else, Maryland could win the whole thing.
And listen, neither of these teams, neither the Terps nor the Scarlet Knights, unless they go to Minneapolis, shock the world, and win the Big Ten tournament, they're not going to be part of the NCAA tournament. But you have a lot of guys who don't want their careers to end. Could you get into the NIT with the new rule? The regular season champ, remember, from these smaller conferences doesn't necessarily get into the NIT, which is trying to get some more power teams. You like an NIT game just in the shadow of New York City at Rutgers, or, for example, just in the shadow of D.C. in College Park? That would be terrific. And both those squads, I think, would certainly accept those invitations. So something to play for both Maryland and Rutgers, even if they don't get to the NCAA tournament. Well, Indiana, Penn State, each in that same situation, not postseason teams, certainly not NCAA tournament teams. But what Mike Rhodes has done at Penn State is really impressive. They returned 5%, not of production, 5% of their total minutes played from last year. And yet this is a team that has a chance to finish above 500 in the Big Ten after that win over Indiana. They sweep the season series from the Hoosiers. I don't think you can give enough credit to what Mike Rhodes has done in year 1.
And you think about that 5%. Without Kanye Clary, probably
Correct.
4%
It's probably
is
lower.
gone. So it's 1% now just with Jamil Brown returning. He's got complete buy-in from this group. And I love what he did coming from VCU. He didn't just bring Ace Baldwin, his best player, his point guard. He also brought Nick Kern. And Nick Kern has set the tone in the locker room. That's a culture setter, a guy that's going to play hard, know who he is offensively, not shoot jump shots, make back cuts, finish at the rim, love to defend, and that's what makes this team go. They know who they are, and they have buy-in on the defensive end, and then they're starting to do the little things. You think about how they beat Indiana. They won the rebounding war, and Penn State is a smaller team, especially compared to Indiana. So them winning the rebounds shows their toughness. They took care of the basketball, and then Ace Baldwin has been great. Since they put the basketball in his hands, he's turned the seasons around. 23 points, 9 assists to go along with his 4 steals. Big time all game long, making plays on both ends.
Look at the 4 games that Indiana has remaining. You have Wisconsin, you have to travel to College Park, you have to travel to Minneapolis, you have Michigan State.
That's tough.
Over the next 2 weeks, I think we see if this team is bought in for the rest of the year.
For sure.
They know the NCAA tournament's not there unless they run the table in Minneapolis. With a schedule as difficult as that and as brutal as this season has been for Indiana, I want to see if this team still actually wants to play out the rest of the year.
Yeah, you want to see him have some fight. I finished dead last place in the Big Ten my sophomore year. We're on the bus going to Wisconsin. I've told you this story. I'll never forget it. We had guys on the back of the bus, our starting guards, making spring break plans. Talking to guys actually from Indiana, their buddies, they were making spring break plans as well because they were bottom of the league that year as well. So you can't have that type of things go on in your locker room. I look at Trey Galloway as a guy that's going to give his all every single game. He's going to maximize his efforts. He's got to be a guy in the locker room to make sure no guys are going on break early. You can't just sell the season in. You can't just give up now. You think of Khalil Ware, Mackenzie Mbako, they have to continue to play hard, even Malik Renew, because they have NBA aspirations, and they show that they're quitters, that they're just going to quit on the season, quit on their coach, a guy that's come from the NBA. That won't look good at all.
Hey, man, flights are expensive. You get those hot deals for spring break down in Florida. You got to jump on those as soon as you can. And we are thrilled now to be joined by Keith Cooley as today's big interview. Keith, first and foremost, congratulations on all your accomplishments. Thank you for everything that you've done for the city of Detroit, for the state of Michigan, for the Midwest in general. Congratulations on being a big impact pioneer, and welcome into the show.
Thank you very much for making that choice, and good to see you.
Keith, I want to start all the way back at the beginning of the story that we started to tell, and you becoming the first African-American gymnast to step foot on the University of Michigan campus. How much were you aware of the significance of that at the time?
Not very much, to tell you the truth. I was a walk-on, so I mean we didn't have trampoline or gymnastics at Pontiac Central High School when I was there. I ended up taking a gym class at Michigan because I had friends beforehand that had a trampoline. I would go to their house. They lived out in the suburbs, and I had so much fun on it. I said, I want to try this. When I got to school, began to go over after classes and watch the guys on the team and then practice either before them or after them. That's when I got the sense that I was the first one. At least I was the first one in their history. So it was probably right around that time. And that, by the way, was kind of the end of my freshman year, beginning of my sophomore year.
What was your emotional state as you started that journey? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Were you scared? Were you a combination of everything?
Combination of everything. I had no intention of becoming a member of the team, but the coach, Newt Loken, who was just a wonderful guy, one of my mentors, said after he'd seen me there for several months, he said, "You know what? I think you could make the team if you try it out." And I said, I don't think that's a chance. He said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. You go home this summer. I'm going to send a trampoline for you to practice on. You practice. When you come back in the fall, I back away. If you make the team, you do it on your own." He sent the trampoline. I practiced, and that next year was my freshman year of eligibility for the team. And the year after that, I competed for the Big Ten championship in 1966 with the rest of the team. It was a great time.
When you officially became a member of the team, how were you received by your teammates, by your opponents, by others who saw you as someone very different competing in what had been a fairly homogenous sport?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, there was a little trepidation, but almost every member, I think every member of the gymnastics team really embraced me. We got to be really good friends. I will tell you that across campus, especially in the offices of the academic community and the rest of the college, I think there was some hesitation. An example, I was told that at that time we had yell leaders. We didn't have cheerleaders. So the members of the gymnastics team were the guys that went out and did the flips off the stands, and to make the count for how many scores had been made, how much the football team had scored. And they also did some yelling at the basketball games. I asked to be a member of the yell leading team for football and was told no. Essentially, I could cheer for basketball, but not football. Football brought in a lot of money, is my guess. So, but other than that, everybody was welcoming and friendly.
So how did that experience, Keith, both the positive and the negative, shape your future and what eventually would become important to you after college?
Well, I think what that did was just help me understand that the world is made up of a lot of different people, and some people need to get to know you better as who you are and as an individual, so they're not ended up grouping you in with some stereotype look at what they think people who don't look like them are like. And so I did the best I could to engage people, whether they liked me or not, or whether I knew if they liked me or not, engage them, get to know them, have them get a sense of me, and then move forward from that point of view. And I'd like to think that that has helped me to either build bridges or cross bridges over the last 50, 60 years.
One of those things that have helped a lot of folks cross some bridges is a project called the Minority Engineering Project Office Program. It was designed to help recruit minority students from schools into engineering, and you helped start that program. What was the genesis, and why was that particular project so important to you?
Yeah, well, when I got to Michigan and began the engineering curriculum, I recognized that I could walk to classes every week and count on one hand how many people I saw that kind of looked like me. And I'd have fingers left over. And members of the faculty and the engineering administration knew the same thing. So as I got close to graduation, the dean of the college, Dean Van Wylen, Associate Dean Isley, and one of my professors said, we would like you to help us build a capability to attract minorities, women, and physically challenged students into this college. Can you help us with that? My answer was absolutely yes. And they gave me the step up to do that in 1969, I think it was. I spent a couple of years out building reactors for the Navy, as a matter of fact, in upstate New York before I got back to school for my master's degree, and then began the MIPO journey.
Both massive responsibilities. I'm curious as to what your initial feeling was and your reaction was, and how large that responsibility felt when you were asked to take on that project.
It felt huge. I'm not sure I could have done it had I not had the assistance of my major professor, Dave Bach, assistant Dean Joe Isley, and Dean Van Wylen. They talk to me 2 or 3 times a week. How you doing? What can we do to help? And they really did make a big difference, because that office, being the first one there, came under a lot of scrutiny by people that weren't really as happy about seeing it being raised up and doing the things it was doing.
Among your other professional ventures, you became CEO of a nonprofit called Focus Hope to fight for civil and human rights in Detroit. I know that city remarkably important to you. You still live there. Tell us more about the goal and the process behind that particular venture.
Yeah, Focus Hope was set up actually years ago, 1968, I believe, right after the Detroit riots. And the idea behind that organization was to help to bridge the gap between the city and some of its less represented, less qualified, if you will, citizens, and give people who otherwise would not have the means an opportunity, a leg up to get a college degree or learn, get an associate's degree and get out there and join the workforce in a way that made everyone proud. We were taking students who were unable to read or do math at the 7th or 8th grade level when they graduated from high school and spinning them up into machinists and information technologists and even engineering, manufacturing engineering students. So it was quite a venture. It had been going for several years. When the founders eventually got sick and had to move on, I was chosen to pick the mantle up, and I was honored to do it and pleased that we were able to do such a good job of it. We sent students to Ford, GM, and many of the suppliers around them, and some of those students I still see today.
And I know it's been a lifelong goal and dream of yours to improve the city of Detroit in so many different ways, and the state of Michigan. You're a member of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's advisory council on what is called environment justice. What is that council's goal? How do you kind of get there? How do you reach that ultimate goal?
I think in a nutshell, the goal is that as the country, and especially as Michigan, makes the transition from carbon-based fuels and greenhouse gas issues and moves to decarbonization and hopefully a place where we're no longer warming the planet, that everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, location, income, etc., everyone can enjoy the same level of freedom from health problems and live in communities that are healthy, wealthy, and up to the challenge of living every day for the kids and the community to make it as good as it can be. So we work, there are about 12, 13 of us that work pretty hard across the state of Michigan to make sure that that vision can become a reality.
A life that has been lived fully so far, with many more great years to give, and the thought always for others. Keith Cooley, our latest big impact pioneer. Keith, again, thank you for everything that you've done. It's been wonderful to get to know you a little bit better.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
It is time for us to take you around the Big Ten, a busy weekend in Olympic sports. We start with swimming and diving. And how about Indiana taking the championships by a half point over Ohio State? And look at the total number of points being scored. It came down to the last race. And when you put that much into it, when there's that much stress, you need a little bit of release after the final results. And that's exactly what took place for the Hoosiers. Our congratulations to Indiana swimming and diving. For the second consecutive year, the Wisconsin Badgers are the men's indoor track and field champions. Badgers always in the championship hunt in this event. As for the women's, congrats to the Illini. This is a bit of a surprise. For the first time since 2013, Illinois track and field and cross country champions on the women's side. Ohio State women's basketball winning over the weekend and clinching a share of the regular season championship. Buckeyes' only loss this season in the Big Ten came to Michigan. Fittingly, they play the Wolverines midweek, and if the Buckeyes win, they are the outright champs, already will be the number 1 seed. That's locked in because of tiebreakers. Newly released Women's Associated Press poll, Ohio State still at number 2. Everybody's following South Carolina. Iowa falls a couple of spots to number 6 after that midweek loss. You see Indiana at 14. Couple of future Big Ten teams also inside the top 10, with USC at number 7 and UCLA at number 8. Check out the Big Ten men's hockey standings. This is the final weekend of the regular season. Michigan State and Wisconsin, only teams that have a chance to win the regular season title. So fantastic. They play each other this weekend with a pair up at the Kohl Center. Minnesota, Michigan battling for that third spot. They also play each other this weekend. Final series of the regular season for the Gophers, and Wolverines will be at Mariucci in Minneapolis. Paul Caponigri is with us.
It's like they knew.
And Cappy, this is exactly what we were hoping for at the start of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, I think this is what they thought the Big Ten would look like 10 years ago when it was created, and you finally have it. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. This is, hockey, the playoffs, building up to that is the best time of year. And, those standings, I like how they show them. There's not all the numbers, but when you get to tiebreakers and all that crazy stuff in the Big Ten hockey, there's one at the bottom. I was looking at with Penn State and Ohio State, and we couldn't figure out if Ohio State were to tie them, it goes to a third tiebreaker and Penn State wins it. So that series isn't going to mean quite as much. But not that does, but it affects the other two. You're wondering, okay, what are the tiebreakers if those ones get tied?
Well, and the tiebreaker at the top, Wisconsin, Michigan State, that's a little bit more clear because this is the second time they've met. Everybody plays everybody else 4 times. Michigan State won both games against the Badgers in East Lansing in regulation. So that means if they end up tying in the total point standings, then Michigan State is the number 1 seed heading into the Big Ten tournament. Of course, then you get the bye all the way into the semifinals, which basically means the Badgers need 5 points this weekend. They need a regulation win and a shootout win or better. So let's start to talk about that particular series.
Sure.
Michigan State got the better of them in East Lansing. Wisconsin, a little bit of a struggle a couple of weeks ago. They lost 2 in a row to Ohio State, got back on track this weekend, and you have to feel like the Badgers at home are a significantly better team. They've been really good this year in Madison.
Yeah, they have, and the crowds have continued to grow, which helps your team. Every team goes through their highs and lows. I felt like Wisconsin really hadn't had one. I think going to Ohio State, you get beat the first night. You're like, okay, they got one on us. We'll get them tomorrow. But then you lose the second one. Maybe there's a little, okay, we need to take a step back. And Coach Hastings is really good at kind of, okay, we got to get back to the racer board and fix things. They clearly did. They went out and shut out Penn State in Happy Valley. Not an easy thing to do. And then they win in overtime Saturday. So you feel like got their mojo back. They're playing a better team. Michigan State sees this. This is going to be their first chance. They're the only team in the Big Ten. You've seen those 7 teams that have not won a regular season Big Ten or a tournament title. So a lot on the line there. I'm sure that's emphasized. And, I just think it's going to be a tough physical battle. You got 2 teams finally back to where they want to be. Adam Nightingale's got this team for the first time. It's just going to be really exciting. I'm just really glad for these programs, and it's great for the conference.
And, of course, the other series that we're keeping our eye on is Michigan and Minnesota. A couple of different reasons for the Wolverines. We'll get into the pairwise in just a second. But this is in Minneapolis. It's always a tough place to play. And I think Michigan knows what's at stake as they get ready to head up there to take on the Gophers.
They do, and I think they always seem to play better when they're doubted. I think that because they're an extremely confident team. But the last couple of years, they went into Mariucci in the Big Ten championship game with 10,000 screaming Gopher fans, and they beat the Gophers. And last year's Gopher team they were just loaded, almost won a national title. So Michigan goes in there with the utmost confidence. And I think when they're looked at as the underdogs, they do better. So, and this is their opportunity in many ways to get to 3rd place in the Big Ten. And also, like you talk about, and we're going to, is NCAA tournament ramifications are huge in this series.
Yeah, standings in the Big Ten are important, but Michigan knows it can't win the Big Ten regular season title. It can clearly win the Big Ten tournament, but what they're really focused on, those pairwise rankings.
Yes.
Top 16 at the end of conference tournament time get into the NCAA tournament. Now, there's not going to be as much movement as there typically is outside the power leagues, right? Because Hockey East, the Big Ten, and the NCHC going to fill up almost all of the 16 spots with just a couple of spots left. So Michigan probably needs to stay. If you're 14 or better in the pairwise, you're going to be really comfortable at the end of the regular season.
Yes.
But that means that they cannot afford to go on the road and get swept this weekend by Minnesota. It's that simple.
It really is. They won't be out of it because obviously they could
be
win
up against it.
For sure. And then, we go back to that historic one year where Minnesota was right on the line, missed the tournament by 1,000th of a point, and the team that got in won the whole thing. And I think that's another thing with Michigan. They're a team that could not make the tournament.
Or win it all.
They could win the whole thing. They have that much talent. You saw it this weekend. They only gave up 1 goal in 2 games against Notre Dame, a team that has been dominant at Yost. They've only lost once since 2018. To Michigan at Yost. They've had a great record there, and Michigan didn't play really well on Friday, won 4-0, played better Saturday, got a late goal to win 2-1. So they gave up 1 goal. If they get goaltending and defense like that, they've got the offensive guys. So I like seeing them with their backs against the wall where they have to win because it seems to bring out the best in them.
And I think the Big Ten tournament is going to be fascinating because whether it's Wisconsin or Michigan State,
they're the favorites, but are they going to be?
The other team is the 2 seed, and in this league, if it's Wisconsin, Ohio State, we just saw Ohio State knock off the Badgers in 2 consecutive games, right? Notre Dame is always a dangerous team, and Penn State is going to fire so many shots on you that I don't think anybody, regardless of the matchup that we're going to have, remember the quarterfinals are the best 2 out of 3. Higher seeded team gets to play at home, and then the semifinals, once you get to the semis, you're in a one-game elimination situation. This is what makes college hockey so great because you can predict as much as you want, and you're almost entirely going to be wrong, I'd say 80 to 90% of the time.
Well, right, because a team can be dominating play. A goalie makes great saves. One puck goes the other way. 2-on-1, bang, you're down a goal. You're like, wait, we've been playing great, but we're losing? And hockey's just great like that, and then momentum, builds for teams like that. When you score a goal like that, you get confidence. Look at Ohio State. They built confidence beating Wisconsin twice. They went into Munn last week and won 6-2 on Friday night. And then with a 5-minute major really got them Saturday, but they were right in that game. So you're right. Anything can happen in the playoffs, and that's what makes hockey so good.
And we are so excited to have the semifinals and the finals covered for you right here on Big Ten Network. Cappy and I be talking plenty of pucks when we are off camera as well over the next couple of weeks. 2 weeks left in the Big Ten men's basketball regular season. Purdue with a 2.5-game lead over Illinois. The Illini do have a game in hand. Wisconsin and Northwestern tied at 10-6. They are the 3rd and 4 seeds above that first blue line, which signifies they get the double bye. Wouldn't have to play until Friday. Nebraska certainly in that conversation. 1 game behind in the loss column. Obviously rooting against the Badgers and the Wildcats. And then you see that bunch just above the second blue line, Maryland, Rutgers, Indiana, Iowa, Penn State, all those teams trying to avoid having to play on Wednesday night. If you are inside the top 10, you don't have to play until Thursday. Let's show you in bracket form. If the season ended today, which Raphael tells me it does not, this is what the tournament bracket would look like. Very good chance that those 4 teams you see on the left are playing on Wednesday, but a bunch more movement will take place on Thursday, Friday. See some potential interesting matchups like maybe a Rutgers, Michigan State in the second round, or maybe a Maryland, Illinois in the quarterfinals. Unfortunately, you can take a picture if you want. All this is going to change a lot before we get to a couple of Wednesdays from now in Minneapolis. What's the thought process right now for players? It's the dog days of the season. You got a couple of weeks left. There's really only a few teams that are in the hunt for the regular season title. Everybody else is playing for seeding or a spot in the tourney.
You just keep playing and trying to get better every single day. If you're at the top of the league like a Purdue, like a Illinois, you understand you can't lose a game to finish out this season. For Illinois, you want to compete to win the league. You still have a chance. For Purdue, you want that #1 overall seed in the tournament, so that's your fight. And then if you're in that middle of the pack, you're still playing for a tournament berth. You're still playing for an NIT maybe. So it's about getting ready to play every single day and getting better every single practice.
I also believe, if we can put up that bracket one more time, that this year maybe more so than any other season, there are so many possibilities. I mean, I like Illinois a lot. I could see Maryland going on a run into the semis. How about Nebraska, Northwestern in the quarters? I mean, flip a coin. And why couldn't Rutgers, if it plays defense the way it typically does, beat Michigan, Michigan State, and Wisconsin to get all the way to the semis?
Yeah, it's Monday, and I'm going to make a bold prediction. You look at Rutgers where they're sitting. They're not scared of Michigan. I think that Rutgers team with their defense, with Jeremiah Williams, they could beat a Michigan State, and then they get to that game against Wisconsin with their athleticism, what they present defensively, what Steven Crowd normally struggles against, and A.J. Storr. We've seen them beat Wisconsin this season. Rutgers could be cooking.
So you're saying right now, right matchups, Rutgers is a team that you could see making it all the way to the semis.
Right matchups, I could see Rutgers making it all the way to the championship.
Wow, that is a Monday bold prediction from our man, Raphael Davis, as we wrap up this edition of Big Ten Today. No better way to start your week. For Raphael and Paul Caponigri, I'm Rick Pizzo. As always, we appreciate you hanging with us here on Big Ten Today. We'll do it again Tuesday.